You can start with your name, pronouns, year, and major.
My name is Jaydenn Ilagan. I'm a first year. I'm a cognitive science design, specializing in design and interaction in Sixth College, and pronouns she, her.
Alright, so we're gonna start with your first question. What are the 5 pillars of KP and how will you ensure that the interns support all pillars? What ideas do you have in mind?
So the 5 pillars of KP is social, political, academic, cultural, and empowerment. Internship being in empowerment. In order for me to ensure that all the interns, or like that all the pillars have equal, that all the interns know about this, like all 5 pillars, is to make sure that we educate them and bring people from each pillar in to work with the interns, because obviously we work with the social pillar for Sayawan and for the cultural pillar for cultural corners. But one of my ideas is to work more with the political pillar and bring them in to talk about topics that they usually talk about in like the Ethnic 198 class or like PA week. In terms of cultural corners, I do want to do more. And in terms of the academic pillar, I do want to push for people to seek out more resources that STAR has to offer beyond KAA, and advocate for the programs they have, such as like study groups or even taking the Ethnic 198 class, and just, I guess, because these programs are there for a reason, and I feel as if these programs should have equal attention. So basically, to reiterate, to what I'm trying to say is, within the 5 pillars, I feel like we should bring in people from each pillar to talk to the interns about their positions, because it goes so much more beyond what is written in the descriptions, and they have so much to offer. And
So here's a scenario. Scenario: your co-internship co has not done their share of the work to prepare for this week's internship meeting. This is the third time this quarter that they gave you an unbalanced workload. How do you handle this situation?
It's honestly about calling them in, not calling them out. Obviously, bring up the situation to them, and just this idea of transparency, communication. Because at the end of the day, you do have a co for a reason, and if your co is failing to get their work done, it's a topic of conversation that needs to be brought up. Because when you talk, or like when you have a co, you have a partner for a reason, and the workload should be split evenly. But as long as it's if they can't get something done, as long as it's communicated to me, I would be more than willing to take on the extra workload, because like I said before, like, you have a co for a reason. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to being transparent and communicating like the support that you need.
Alright. The next question is, with KP moving towards a safer environment, how will you ensure that there are no negative power dynamics, not only within the KP internship space, but the KP space in general? What will you personally do to continue making KP a safe and welcoming space for everyone?
In terms of making KP and the internship space a safe space, I feel like we have to really emphasize like the community guidelines and make sure that the interns know KP's our story, because at the end of the day, it comes down to this idea of not only is making it a safe space, but also a brave space in which people are able to speak up and be held accountable. Can you reiterate that first part of the question?
Yeah. With KP moving forward towards a safer environment, how will you ensure that there are no negative power dynamics, not only within KP internship space, but the KP space in general?
Yeah, so like I said, I feel like you just have to emphasize like the importance of like these guidelines, and that they're there for a reason. And because at the end of the day, as much as you try to preach for a safe space, it's not always attainable in a sense, which is why I emphasize brave space, because if it goes down to like the principles of like being all inclusive, or just being present, or like leaning into your discomfort, and that's what I mean when I say brave space, because if you see something, you should say something. And in terms of KPR story and all the history that we've gone through, being able to speak up and advocate for what you think is right should be like emphasized a little bit more within the space, and that's the way that you can make the space a little bit safer for everyone as a whole.
And then the second part of the question. Oh, no. Okay. Okay. So your next question is: internship for its first 2 years followed a very similar formula. The past few years is where things were a little different. How do you plan on changing up internship if you were given the position?
If I was given the position, I have various ideas for how I would want to change the space, or not necessarily change space, but add on to what you have already created. Because KP Internship's goal is to introduce members to KP as an entirety, I kind of want to highlight every single aspect that KP has to offer between all 3 boards, Gen, SAR, and Core, and all 5 pillars. Because from something that I noticed this year is that a lot of people, like in terms of shadowing, like a lot of people would shadow towards like the people that they knew and not because the boards that they knew. And one thing I did notice is that Core didn't have as many people shadowing them. So one of my goals, like as if I were to get the position, is to make sure that the idea I had is to make sure the interns shadow one of each board, just so they have knowledge of all 3 boards, because at the end of the day, like the 3 boards are separate, but they make up KP as an entirety, and each board has so much to offer. And in terms of within Gen Board alone, I feel as if we should work more beyond the social pillar for Sayawan, and we should work a little bit more with the cultural pillars in terms of cultural corners and being able to, I guess, educate people about their heritage. And in terms of working with the political pillar, like I said, I want to bring in people from the political pillar to talk about like topics from like PAW Week, or like topics that they talk about in Ethnic 198, because I want to bring the more political and cultural aspect to KP, because from what I've seen in the space this year, a lot of it has been social. Like in terms of the internship space has been a lot of working with the social pillar, and I just want to bring in all other aspects as well. And then can you reiterate the question, please?
Oh, yeah. So, how do you plan on changing up internship if you were given the position?
Another vision that I had in terms of changing up internship was kind of building a bigger bond outside of our meetings, like from 7 to 9 on Mondays, because I noticed one thing is there hasn't been necessarily a time where the interns have been able to, I guess, connect with one another outside of our meeting space, because even in internship, like our internship retreat, there wasn't everyone there. And I feel like if one of my goals is to have at least one event a quarter where the interns can or push to kind of socialize with one another, because I feel like that would not easily, but I feel like it would help eliminate potential clickiness, or say they aren't clicky and they're a little bit more reserved. It kind of pushes them to step outside their comfort zone and talk to one another. Another goal I have is to be approachable resource to these interns, because we are acting as that boundary, or not like that connection, the bridge between board and the interns. And I feel like as a leader, you should be approachable. So one of my goals next year, if I were to get the position, is to have more 2-to-1s or 1-to-1s, just even quick check-ins with the interns, because it's valuable to be able to be transparent and communicate with your leaders, because at the end of the day, you are a resource towards them, and you need to make it apparent that you are there for them. And yeah.
Your next question is, there have been previous complaints that internship has been both too much work or not enough was taken out to justify the experience. How will you ensure that the interns gain meaningful experience and knowledge from the program while also preventing burnout?
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. There have been previous complaints that internship has been both too much work but not enough was taken out to justify the experience. How will you ensure the interns gain meaningful experience and knowledge from the program while also preventing burnout?
I feel like at the end of the day, it all comes down to communication, because if work gets too much for the interns, I feel like it should be communicated towards the intern chords, and that's why I also emphasize the idea of being approachable. In terms of being too much work, I feel as if the internship this year has found a good balance, and I do want to continue that on. But if anything ever comes, like if push comes to shove and and then students start getting burned out, I feel like it's important to emphasize that it's okay to take a step back and put yourself first, and that it's okay to, because you are a student at the end of the day, and you need to know your priorities and know your capacity.
So you have 5 minutes left and you answered all your 5 mandatory questions. Would you like to answer another one?
Okay. Due to the abundant workload that the internship coordinator position can potentially have, tell us how you'll be able to balance other extracurriculars and your position.
So, because of the work, I know internship has a large workload because it is a year-long commitment that's weekly, but honestly, it's all about being organized and managing my time and setting time aside for not only like my other extracurriculars but also myself. One way that I've been doing that this year in terms of balancing myself is making sure I have everything written down on my Google Calendar, and making sure that I even set time aside for specific things. So I would have, obviously, if I get the position, internship would be a priority, but I also want to be able to set a time to do work, just take time for myself as well, but the way I'd be doing that is just to make sure that I have everything written down and organized, because if I see it on paper, then I know, or not on paper, but like on a screen, and like I have everything listed out, like I know like this is for this time, this is for this time, and just having everything organized at the end just make things so much easier.
Alright. So you've answered all of the questions.
No. Do you have any
Any questions for us?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, cool.